Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hard Things podcast. This is your host, Blaine Burgess, and today the topic of the week, or I guess the chapter 4, I'm gonna be writing here is it's called No Friends at Dusk. Today we're gonna be talking a little bit about the movie Tenet. A little bit about the TV show Loki. Per usual, I'm kind of using a couple of pop culture phenomena to kind of talk about what I saw in those shows and how it kind of impacted me. And this is episode 46. As usual, I was looking up the number as we were getting into it. So yeah, without any further ado, what does No Friends at Dusk mean? I believe in the movie Tenet. It's a spy movie, for those of you who don't know. Denzel Washington's son, John David, is the main character. His name is literally the protagonist. Doesn't have a name, and you'll find out that the name is not important. It's really, I think one of the things they're trying to say with that is basically it's your actions that speak louder than your branding. I think is the easiest way or best way to say that. A lot of people nowadays kind of focus on marketing, advertising, branding as trying to convince people who you are. And at the end of the day, it's just your actions that do that. And sometimes what you don't realize is the actions that you think are the loudest may not be the loudest for everyone. And I think that's where perfectionism comes into play. It's being afraid to make a mistake and, not being able to accept the fact that, some people may misunderstand you, may see you a certain way that isn't, the truth. And to be honest, that's going to happen. It's literally inevitable. One thing I've been working on is understanding how to move through that with grace when people misunderstand you or don't quite pick up what you're putting down. It can be painful, especially if you're like me, if you care a lot and you want people to see the best in you, the best in you, and you want people to see the best in you. It could be really difficult. It's one of the hardest things. It's pretty nonsensical. You're the only person that sees 24 hours of your day. So, yeah, I say, again, it's a spy movie, Tenet, and that's a code phrase. The title of the chapter is No Friends at Dusk, but the other side of that is we live in a twilight world. So that's what you say when you go up to a person, and if they say there's no friends at dusk, then you know that you're in the presence of someone who is on the inside, someone that has a piece of information that you need to continue the movie. In this case, the script. It's in the script. So what you come to find out is at the end of the movie, basically the protagonist, the future version of him, was leading the past version of him with these little clues, kind of one at a time. And it's very interesting because inside your consciousness, that's kind of how it is. You're the only person that knows you best. And there's nobody, aside from some omnipotent universal force, a god, whatever it may be, there's nobody that would be better suited to lead you. And some people would argue that God works through you to deliver you to the outcome that is supposed to be. Fate, otherwise. So it's interesting to watch him move through the movie, go back and forwards in time, and eventually get to the right answer, which in this case is kind of stopping the end of the world, or the kind of meltdown of time. So kind of want to focus my thought. I mean, these chapter episodes are about focusing myself for the chapter. But I guess when I say no friends at dusk is that throughout the movie, you can use the code phrase to find people, and they have information for you. They're not always friends. There is a woman at the end of the movie. You find out that she had betrayed the protagonist, and he had to take care of that, basically. And all along the way, though, she really helped to get them to the final answer. So it is unfortunate, but there will just be people in life that let you down, and again, misunderstand you and what you stand for. And really, all you can do is just keep doing your best. And if you show up at least 85% of the time as your best self, odds are people are going to notice and see those wins stack up. Genuinely, I think it is about seeing the best in people. Also, like noticing, really doing your best to notice other people when they win and call them out on that, and basically say like, hey, great job, I want to see more of that, because it's encouraging progress, no matter how slow, is also kind of part of the game. And you see that from the protagonist as well. So as much as people maybe let him down or let him down a seemingly wrong path, he also had friends along the way. So it's not to say that there's no friends at all, but there's no friends at dusk, which is the code phrase. And I think part of what this means too is that you have to see each situation as brand new. They say no man enters the same river twice, because it's not the same river and it's not the same man. And I do think that is true as well. So trying our best to approach each situation fresh, and it's obviously not to the detriment of ourselves. Once you see a pattern, a negative pattern, you got to kind of let that go too, and just move on and distance yourself from that. But I do believe that there is such a thing as pattern interrupt. So you can make a different choice and try to interrupt the pattern. And that's where character is built. In making the hard choice when it's time to. And sometimes knowing the hard choice is tough. And what I've been working on a lot recently with myself is patience. So just allowing things to play out and being patient and being prepared to make either choice, whichever one may be the appropriate one at the time. So yeah, that's kind of a lot about Tenet. And in true Tenet fashion, I'm going to end the part about Tenet with how it starts. So again, back to kind of proving yourself. So at the beginning, there's kind of a scene where he's working. It's assumed like some deep cover CIA deal, and they're going after plutonium, which it ends not, and it doesn't end up being plutonium. It's actually something way worse. It's part of an algorithm that can essentially stop time and or invert time, and then would ultimately destroy life as we know it. But he doesn't know this. He's just trying to stop some nuclear attack. But come to find out, it's all set up. At the end of the day, it was leading into him getting into a deeper organization. So to be able to trust him, and ultimately you find out he's behind it, his future self. So in order to trust himself, he has to put himself through something ultra stressful, which is an interrogation. And basically he doesn't give up any information. They start pulling his teeth and like torturing him and doing all these awful things. And he gets to the point where he decides to crack a tooth and get after a cyanide pill. And you see them actually remove the tooth, and he's like, oh, you can't use this anymore, haha. So even more torture is now he doesn't have a way out. But there is a guy on the ground in front of him, and he sees the guy hold up a pill, and he assumes it's the cyanide, so he dives for it, eats it, and basically he's willing to die rather than talk. And that's obviously a level of loyalty that you can't buy. It really just has to be proven in a moment, and oftentimes you prove it right before you die. So you see him do this, and then he wakes up in a hospital bed, and they put all of his teeth back together, and basically they're like, hey, welcome to the afterlife. You passed the test with flying colors. Now you're going to help stop World War III and the end of the world. And I just think that's really interesting. I think one of the hardest things in this world is to gain and maintain trust. And really, it's you can tell I'm having a hard time finding the words, but it's unfortunate because negativity bias, the dangers of our world, people are being deceitful kind of more than ever at this time. So even if you're a good person and you have a moment of weakness, and that person sees that one moment and latches onto it, it's one of those things that is just unfortunate. Like it's not something that you can necessarily overcome quickly or kind of prove against. And honestly too, sometimes people with their own, presumptions, prejudices, even some pride, they can kind of double down on that and really hold it against you. And at the end of the day, you have to decide how long you can try to, prove that trust and prove that loyalty before, it just becomes kind of a moot point. It's like, hey, we're never going to overcome this. I wish we could. And it really is up to, it's up to both people to kind of meet in the middle and come back to terms. So that's, I think, was something that really impressed me about that movie, is just to kind of immediately say like, hey, this is how much buy-in you have to have. You have to commit to the bit and really go hard. And genuinely, it's one of the hardest things to do. So I just thought that was cool that they kind of called it out. And a lot of people may breeze past that in the first part of the movie. And yeah, it's I think one of the most important parts. And it's funny that it's at the beginning, because the way Tenet is, everyone in a movie assumes the ending is the most important thing. But I think in Tenet it's inverted. If you know the movie, inverted is a key term. But anyways, we're going to keep it moving to Loki. I have a lot of things I could say about Loki. There's the part where he falls in love with himself in the form of a woman. There's a part where he makes friends with versions of himself. But most importantly, I think towards the end of the series, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it yet, he is moving towards kind of the ultimate outcome of the universe. Like there's like timelines within timelines and universes within universes, and he realizes the enormity of it. And he tries to find all these solutions to a problem. And he just digs and digs and digs. And he ultimately realizes that he ultimately realizes that it's up to him in a way, and he tries all these different combinations, basically infinite. He has the power of time travel. He can move forward and back and through time and space kind of at will. And he just realizes that there's only one way to get the job done. And so at the end, he kind of gives up everything. Doesn't necessarily sacrifice himself, but he just realizes that nobody else is going to take the responsibility. And this goes back to the no friends at dusk thing. Like, it's not that those people aren't your friends or aren't your friend for a period of time, but like at the end of the day, you're the only person that you can trust 100%. So you got to have yourself on your side at all times first before you interact with anyone else. And sometimes other people just have a different purpose in life. Whatever your purpose is isn't the same as theirs. You can't necessarily share that purpose. So despite how much they might want to come with you, they can't. It's just your responsibility. So yeah, at the end of the day, Loki does what's necessary. He kind of realizes that they're not going to be able to use science or anything else logical to kind of overcome the scaling issue they're having with the thriving timelines of history. So he kind of just walks towards it, grabs all the threads, sits down on a throne in the middle, and boom, tree of life, tree of stories. And he kind of ascends to the throne that, if you know Loki in all of the Marvel movies, is something that he wanted the whole time. And to be a ruler, the protector, he basically had to give it all up. Give up everything to be given everything. And his definition of everything obviously included way more responsibility than he probably bargained for. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's a little bit like this first chapter episode that I was talking about. So Love is the Death of Duty, episode 43. Jon Snow goes on this big adventure and learns all these things, and at the end he ends up right back where he started. And for Loki, it's kind of the same. He started out wanting a throne and doing everything he could to get it, and it was all kind of the wrong thing. And then at the end of the day, he just figured out how to kind of surrender to the circumstances. He levels up to the point where he gets to the time variance authority, which are the people beyond time that kind of police time. And he realizes the rules I've always been playing by are no longer the rules. There's a whole different set of rules here. Oh my gosh. And he realizes there's power to be gained, and he does everything he can to get it. And once he gets it, he realizes he has to give up everything to get it. And that is one of the hardest things about sacrifice. To get what you want, you have to sacrifice. At this point in my life, I don't know if I know the answer completely, but you have to sacrifice everything, I think. And that's obviously a major bummer to like hear. I think that's why people didn't like the ending of Game of Thrones. I haven't seen much chatter about if people like Loki or not. I think they love the ending for Loki, but they wouldn't necessarily love it for themselves. And Jon Snow maybe is a guy who you see more of yourself in because he's mortal to a point. Definitely vulnerable, like died at one point. And you can kind of understand, what he's going through, and kind of being a little bit more human, whereas Loki kind of is a god and turns into more of a god. But all that to say that life is sacrifice. To say yes to something, you got to say no to something else. And really, at the end of the day, you can agonize about it, you can do research, you can ask for other people's opinions, but once again, the only person that matters is you. Do you respect yourself? Do you ultimately accept the responsibility for being the person that you want to be? And not only do you want to be the person that you need to be happy. I think happiness just comes from being who you are. Deep down, who are you? And living that to your highest ability is what puts you in reach of happiness. And I'll end, because I brought it back to happiness, I'll end with, I believe it's a Chinese definition of happiness. The way that the characters are written, it literally means open heart. And I think all of the characters that I mentioned today began with an open heart and maybe had some preconceptions that didn't quite work with that. But they finished with the actual open heart. Like they whatever their flaw was, they overcame and triumphed. And I think in my life, I use that as a great example. That's why I love this chapter. I think that again, it's like the phase of life that I'm in right now. I think this is the phase that I'm in presently, is trying to go from a place of fear and doubt to a place of just kind of heart-centered action. So again, the genuine kind of role models provided through these different media, these different shows, different stories. You can see what, as much as the authors and showrunners wanted to be popular, I think at the end of the day too, they want to make a statement. And it's popular because at some level people know it's true. They may not be able to acknowledge it straight up in a conversation or even act the things out in their own life. But I bet you these guys thought they would inspire at least one guy, and they did. They succeeded in inspiring me. And I'm going to do my best to root myself in that sentiment for writing this book, because I want it to come from a place of open-heartedness and hopefully strike someone who's ready to get to that next level and be truly happy. So with that, I'm going to take off for today, but I'll be releasing a new episode in a couple days. I'm very excited to keep getting after this book thing. And until next time, this has been Blaine. See you later.